I stood in the fluorescent-lit arrivals area of Denver International Airport, watching the last passengers from my flight disappear through the sliding doors. My son, Michael's BMW, was nowhere in sight. I checked my phone. Nothing. No missed calls, no texts. Just the screensaver photo of my granddaughter Emma that I'd taken 3 days ago. "Come on, Michael," I muttered, dialing his number again. It went straight to voicemail. Again. I'd just spent 72 hours at Michael's house in Boulder. A visit that had started pleasant enough, but ended in the worst argument we'd ever had. He wanted me to co-sign a loan for some investment opportunity his firm was involved in. $500,000. When I'd said no, when I'd told him I needed that money for my medical expenses and retirement, his face had changed. The son I'd raised, the boy I'd worked double shifts to put through law school, looked at me like I was a stranger who'd just insulted him. "You're being selfish, Dad," he'd said. "After everything I've done for you," everything he'd done for me? I'd bitten my tongue. I'd raised him alone after his mother passed when he was 8. I'd sacrificed everything. The argument had escalated. He'd driven me to the airport in silence, barely waiting for me to get my suitcase from the trunk before speeding off. That was 2 hours ago. I'd assumed he was just angry, that he'd cool off and come back. But now the airport was emptying out, and my phone showed 11:47 p.m. I sat down on a cold metal bench, my carry-on beside me, and faced the reality. My son had abandoned me at the airport. I had exactly $43 in my wallet. My credit card was maxed from Emma's birthday present. My regular medications were back home in Phoenix, a 12-hour drive away. The last flight to Phoenix had departed 20 minutes ago. I'm 62 years old. I'd spent 40 years as a mechanical engineer, retired with dignity, raised a son on my own, and now I was sitting in an airport at midnight, discarded like trash because I wouldn't bankroll my son's greed. "Excuse me, is someone sitting here?" I looked up. An elderly man stood beside the bench, one hand resting on a white cane, the other clutching a leather briefcase. He wore an expensive suit, perfectly tailored, and dark glasses despite the late hour. Behind him, a younger man in a chauffeur's uniform hovered uncertainly. "No, please," I said, moving my bag. "Thank you." The old man sat down with practiced ease, his movements suggesting he'd been blind for a long time. His chauffeur positioned himself a few feet away, speaking quietly into a phone. We sat in silence for a moment. Then the old man spoke. "You're upset." It wasn't a question. I suppose my heavy breathing had given me away. "Just a bad day," I said. "Bad enough to be sitting in an airport at midnight, alone." I laughed bitterly. "That obvious? I may be blind, mister." He paused. "Carter. Tom Carter." "Mr. Carter, I'm Jonathan Wright. And yes, it's that obvious. I can hear it in your voice. Betrayal has a particular sound." He tilted his head. "Family?" I shouldn't have been surprised, he guessed. "My son?" Ah, something in that single syllable conveyed understanding. "Money? How did you—" "Because I'm sitting here alone too, Mr. Carter. My granddaughter was supposed to pick me up 3 hours ago. She called 40 minutes ago to say she's too busy with her charity gala. Suggested I take an Uber." He smiled without humor. "I'm worth $4 billion. I built TechCore Solutions from nothing. And my own granddaughter can't spare an hour to pick up her blind grandfather from the airport. $4 billion. I'd read about Jonathan Wright. Everyone in the tech world had. He'd revolutionized cloud computing in the 90s, then lost his sight in a car accident in 2005, but continued running his company until his retirement last year. "I'm sorry," I said. "That's awful." "Don't be. It's clarifying." He turned his head toward me, though he couldn't see me. "Tell me, Mr. Carter, do you have somewhere to go tonight?" I'll figure something out." "That's not an answer." His voice was sharp, used to cutting through corporate nonsense. "Do you have money for a hotel? Family nearby? A plan?" The kindness in his directness broke something in me. "No," I admitted. "My son was my ride. He left me here. I have $43 and no way home to Phoenix until tomorrow morning. And even then, I don't know how I'll afford the ticket." Jonathan was quiet for a long moment. His chauffeur was still on the phone, now looking frustrated. Then Jonathan spoke, and his words changed everything. "Mr. Carter, I'm going to make you an unusual proposition. My chauffeur Marcus is trying to find an Uber for me. But honestly, I'm tired of this. Tired of being treated like an obligation. So here's what I propose. You pretend to be my grandson. Just for tonight. Marcus will drive us to my estate. You'll stay in one of the guest rooms. Tomorrow, I'll have Marcus drive you wherever you need to go. In exchange, you help me send a message to my granddaughter Victoria that I'm not entirely dependent on her charity." I stared at him. "You want me to pretend to be your grandson? Just for tonight. Tomorrow, we'll admit, it was a misunderstanding, that you were helping an old blind man, and I got confused. But tonight, I want Victoria to wonder. I want her to worry that maybe I've found someone else to leave my estate to. That's crazy. Is it any crazier than being abandoned by our own flesh and blood?" He smiled slightly. "Besides, what else are you going to do? Sleep on this bench?" He had a point, and something in his voice, in his proposition, felt like justice, like a small rebellion against children who'd forgotten what family meant. "Okay," I heard myself say. "I'll do it." Jonathan's smile widened. "Excellent. Marcus," the chauffeur approached. He was a tall, dignified black man in his 50s, with the bearing of someone who'd been in the military. His expression was carefully neutral. "Yes, sir? Change of plans. This is my grandson, Tom. He's been away for many years, but we've reconnected. We're going home." Marcus's eyebrows rose fractionally, but he was too professional to question his employer. "Of course, sir. This way, please." The drive to Jonathan's estate took 40 minutes. We left the airport and headed into the mountains west of Denver, climbing into increasingly exclusive neighborhoods until we turned onto a private drive that wound through pine trees. The house at the end was less of a house and more of a modern masterpiece, all glass and steel and stone, built into the mountainside with views that must have been spectacular in daylight. "Home," Jonathan said as Marcus helped him from the car. "Tom, Marcus will show you to your room. We'll talk more in the morning. I assume you're hungry?" "Starving, actually." "Marcus, please have Patricia prepare something for my grandson." Inside, the house was exactly what I'd expected from a tech billionaire. Elegant but minimalist, with technology seamlessly integrated into everything. Marcus led me through hallways lined with abstract art, up a floating staircase to a guest wing that was larger than my entire house in Phoenix. "This is the Blue Room," Marcus said, opening a door to reveal a suite that belonged in a 5-star hotel. King bed, sitting area, private bathroom with a shower that looked like it belonged in a spa. "Patricia will bring dinner shortly. Is there anything else you need, Mr. Carter?" The way he said my real name told me he knew exactly what was happening and was reserving judgment. "Marcus, I should explain." "No need, sir. Mr. Wright is an excellent judge of character. If he trusts you, that's sufficient for me." He paused. "Though I should warn you, his granddaughter Victoria is intense. When she finds out about this, things may become complicated." "How complicated?" "Mr. Wright is worth approximately $4 billion, sir. His estate plan is a matter of significant interest to various parties. Victoria has been his primary heir for the past 5 years, since her father, Mr. Wright's son, passed away. She may not take kindly to the appearance of a long-lost grandson. This is just for tonight, though. Tomorrow we'll explain it was all a misunderstanding." Marcus's expression suggested he knew better, but he simply nodded. "Of course, sir. Dinner will be up shortly." After he left, I sat on the edge of the bed, trying to process what I'd done. I'd agreed to pretend to be the grandson of a billionaire. This was insane. I should leave, call a taxi, go to a budget motel, figure this out myself. But the bed was incredibly comfortable. And when Patricia, a kind-faced woman in her 60s, arrived with a tray of French onion soup, crusty bread, and a small Caesar salad, I realized I was too exhausted to leave. I'd deal with the consequences tomorrow. I woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the smell of fresh coffee. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then it all came back. The airport, Jonathan. The insane proposition. I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Michael, all from an hour ago. 1 voicemail. Dad, I'm at the airport. Where are you? Did you get a ride? Call me back. Too little, too late. I deleted it. After a shower in the magnificent bathroom, I found clothes laid out on the bed. Expensive casual wear, perfectly my size. A note in Braille in English. Thought you might need these. Join me for breakfast when you're ready. J. Downstairs, I found Jonathan on a terrace overlooking a valley. The view was stunning, mountains stretching to the horizon. He sat at a table laden with breakfast foods, a cup of coffee in his hands. Good morning, Tom. I hope you slept well. Like the dead. Thank you for this, Mr. Wright. You didn't have to. Please, call me Jonathan. And I did have to. Last night, you reminded me what kindness looks like. A stranger showed me more consideration in 5 minutes than my granddaughter has in 5 months. He gestured to the seat across from him. Sit, eat. We have much to discuss. I sat, poured coffee, loaded a plate with eggs and bacon. About last night, I've been thinking that you should leave before this gets complicated. Don't. It's already complicated. Victoria called Marcus at 6 this morning, demanding to know who you are. Apparently, the household staff have been gossiping. I should go. This isn't right. Why not? Because we're not really family? He smiled. Tom, I'm going to tell you something. My son, Richard, Victoria's father, died 5 years ago. Helicopter crash. He was 45. We'd barely spoken in the years before his death. He was too busy with his business. I was too busy with mine. We planned to reconnect. Someday. That someday never came. His voice carried weight of old grief. Victoria is like her father. Driven, ambitious, cold. She visits me once a month, always with her lawyer, always with questions about my health, my estate planning. She's never once asked me how I'm doing, really doing. She treats me like a chess piece in her financial planning. He turned his head toward me. Last night, you helped me because it was the right thing to do. You asked for nothing. That makes you more family to me than she's been in 5 years. Jonathan, hear me out. Stay for a week, just a week. Let me get to know you. Let Victoria wonder. At the end of the week, if you want to leave, I'll have Marcus drive you wherever you want to go. I'll give you enough money to be comfortable for a while. But if you stay, if we find that we actually enjoy each other's company, then we'll see where this goes. You're talking about really pretending to be your grandson. Long term. I'm talking about finding out if family is about blood or about choice, about loyalty, about actually caring whether someone lives or dies. Before I could answer, Marcus appeared in the doorway. His expression was carefully neutral, but I caught the tension in his shoulders. Mr. Wright, your granddaughter Victoria is here, with her attorney. Jonathan smiled, and there was something fierce in it. Excellent. Show them to the terrace. Tom, are you ready to meet your cousin? My heart pounded. This was it. The moment to back out, to explain this was all a mistake. But Jonathan's face held something I recognized. The same hurt I'd felt when Michael's BMW had sped away from the airport curb. The pain of being discarded by someone you'd loved and sacrificed for. I'm ready, I said. Victoria Wright swept onto the terrace like a prosecuting attorney entering a courtroom. She was in her early 40s, blonde, immaculately dressed in a designer suit, carrying a Hermes bag that probably cost more than my car. Behind her came a thin man in his 50s, wearing wire-rimmed glasses and the expression of someone perpetually calculating angles. Grandfather, she said, kissing Jonathan's cheek with the warmth of someone greeting a business associate. I came as soon as I heard. Marcus said you'd brought someone home from the airport? A grandson? Her eyes fixed on me with laser intensity. I wasn't aware you had any other grandchildren. Jonathan gestured to me. Victoria, this is Tom Carter. Tom, my granddaughter, Victoria Wright, and her attorney, Philip Chen. I stood, extended my hand. Victoria shook it briefly, her grip firm and assessing. Philip didn't offer his hand at all. Mr. Carter, Victoria said, her voice perfectly polite and utterly cold. How interesting. Where exactly did you come from? Phoenix, most recently, I said, though I've lived in a lot of places. And your connection to my grandfather is... Jonathan answered before I could. Tom is the son of my first love, Eleanor Mason. We were together before I married Richard's mother. Eleanor and I lost touch, but she had my child. I only found out recently. I tried to keep my face neutral. This was far more elaborate than I'd expected. Victoria's eyes narrowed. That's quite a story, grandfather. Do you have proof of this relationship? DNA tests? Birth certificates? Not yet, Jonathan said calmly, but we're arranging them. Tom and I met by chance at the airport last night. We talked. I recognized his voice, his manner. He has Eleanor's kindness. How convenient, Philip said, speaking for the first time. Mr. Wright, I must advise you that making changes to your estate planning based on unverified claims. I haven't made any changes, Philip. I'm simply getting to know someone who may be my son. If that makes you uncomfortable, perhaps you should examine why. Victoria's face flushed slightly. Grandfather, I'm just trying to protect you. There are people who prey on wealthy elderly people. I'm blind, not senile, Victoria. I'm quite capable of determining whether someone is trying to con me. The tension was thick enough to cut. I felt like a fraud, sitting there while this family drama played out. But Victoria's coldness, the way she and her attorney had come armed for battle rather than curious about a potential family member, told me everything I needed to know about Jonathan's situation. Perhaps Mr. Carter could tell us about himself? Philip suggested, pulling out a tablet. Where he grew up? His education? Work history? It was an interrogation, not a conversation. And suddenly, I was angry. Angry at Michael for abandoning me. Angry at Victoria for treating her grandfather like an asset to be managed. Angry at all the children who forgot that their parents were human beings with feelings. I grew up in Ohio, I said, meeting Philip's eyes. Cleveland, specifically. My mother Eleanor never talked much about my father. Said it was a painful subject. She worked as a nurse. Died when I was 25. I went to Ohio State, studied mechanical engineering, worked for Boeing for 20 years, then GM for 15. Retired 2 years ago. Raised my son Michael on my own after my wife passed. Lived in Phoenix for the last 10 years. All true, except for the mother's name and the connection to Jonathan. The best lies are mostly truth. And your son? Victoria asked. Where is he? We're not currently speaking. Family disagreement. How convenient. So you have no one who can verify your identity? Victoria, Jonathan said sharply. That's enough. Tom is my guest. You will treat him with respect, or you will leave. Victoria's jaw clenched. She wasn't used to being dismissed. Grandfather, I'm simply trying to... I know exactly what you're trying to do. You're trying to assess whether my potential son will affect your inheritance. The answer is, I don't know yet. Now, if you'd like to stay for breakfast and get to know Tom as a person rather than a threat, you're welcome to join us. If not, I'm sure you have important charity work to attend to. The dismissal was cutting. Victoria stood, smoothing her skirt. I think we should continue this conversation when you've had time to think more clearly, grandfather. Philip will be in touch about arranging those DNA tests. You do that. She left without saying goodbye to me, Philip trailing behind her. As they disappeared into the house, I heard her voice, sharp with anger. Find out everything about him. Everything. I want to know what he had for breakfast in 1985. After they were gone, Jonathan sighed. I apologize for that. Victoria can be protective. She thinks I'm running a con. Of course she does. That's how she thinks. Everything is a transaction, a negotiation, a potential threat. He turned toward me. Are you running a con? The directness startled me. No. But I'm not really your son either. We both know that, don't we? He smiled slightly. In the past 12 hours, you've shown me more consideration than my actual granddaughter has in months. You helped a blind stranger without asking for anything in return. You sat with me, talked with me like I was a person rather than a bank account. As far as I'm concerned, that makes you more family than blood ever could. Jonathan, this is crazy. When they run those DNA tests, I'll refuse them. I'm not senile. I can choose who I associate with. If I want to believe you're my son, that's my choice. He reached across the table, found my hand, gripped it firmly. Tom, I'm not asking you to lie for me. I'm asking you to stay for a while. Be my friend. Be my family. Let me leave my money to someone who might actually give a damn whether I live or die. I thought about Michael, about sitting in that airport, watching my son drive away, about 40 years of sacrifice that meant nothing the moment I stopped being useful. Okay, I said. I'll stay. Over the next 2 weeks, I learned what Jonathan's life was really like. The loneliness of being blind and rich, where everyone wanted something from you but no one wanted to just sit and talk. The household staff were kind but formal. Marcus was loyal but paid to be there. Victoria visited twice, both times with Philip, both times turning every conversation into an interrogation. But Jonathan and I found an easy rhythm. Mornings, we'd have breakfast on the terrace, and I'd describe the view, the weather, the birds I saw. He'd tell me stories about building TechCore, about the early days of the internet, about losing his sight and having to reinvent how he experienced the world. Afternoons, I'd read to him. Not business reports, Marcus did that, but novels, history books, philosophy, things he'd never had time for when he was running a company. Sometimes we'd just talk about life, regret, second chances. You know what I miss most about seeing? He asked one afternoon. We were in his study, surrounded by books he'd never read in Braille. Faces. I can't see people's faces anymore. I can't tell if they're lying just by looking at their eyes. That's why I listen so carefully now. People's voices tell the truth their faces might hide. What does my voice tell you? That you've been hurt. Recently. That you're tired of pretending to be strong. That you're a good man who's been treated badly by people who should have known better. He paused. That you're scared this can't last. Can it? I don't know. But I'd like to find out. That evening, Marcus pulled me aside. Mr. Carter, I thought you should know. Victoria has hired a private investigator. He's been asking questions in Phoenix. About you, about your son, about your finances. What did he find? Everything. Your real background, the fight with Michael, the airport incident. He reported it all back to Victoria. My stomach dropped. Then it's over. She'll tell Jonathan the truth. She already has. This morning. What? And he told her he didn't care. That he'd already guessed you weren't really his biological son. That he was choosing to make you family regardless. I found Jonathan in his music room, listening to Beethoven through speakers that probably cost more than my retirement savings. Marcus told you, he said without turning. Why didn't you say something? Because it doesn't matter, Tom. I knew from the start you weren't really my son. Eleanor Mason died in 1987, and I never had a relationship with anyone by that name. But you needed help, and I needed someone who saw me as a human being rather than a checkbook. We both got what we needed. Victoria knows the truth. She'll use it against us. Let her try. Colorado law is very clear about estate planning. I'm of sound mind. I can leave my money to whomever I choose. If I want to leave it to the man who showed me more kindness in 2 weeks than my blood relatives have in years, that's my prerogative. You're really going to make me your heir? I'm going to give you what you gave me. A choice. A second chance. A family that's chosen, not forced. He turned toward me. Unless you want to leave, I won't force you to stay. I thought about leaving. About going back to Phoenix, to my empty house, to the son who'd abandoned me over money. Or I could stay here, with a blind old man who understood what it meant to be discarded by the people you'd loved most. I'll stay, I said, if you'll have me. Then welcome home, son. The next 2 months were the most peaceful of my life. Jonathan officially introduced me as his son to his business associates. Victoria went silent, plotting with her attorneys, but she couldn't find legal grounds to challenge his decision while he was alive. I helped him reorganize his foundation, shifting funds from Victoria's pet projects to causes that actually mattered: homeless shelters, programs for the blind, scholarships for kids whose parents couldn't afford college, because I remembered working 3 jobs to put Michael through law school. Jonathan's health was declining, though. He'd been diagnosed with congestive heart failure 2 years ago and had declined to pursue aggressive treatment. "I'm 84 years old," he told me. "I've lived a full life. When it's my time, it's my time." One morning in early October, I woke to find Marcus outside my door, his face grave. "It's Mr. Wright. He's had a cardiac event. The ambulance is on its way." At the hospital, doctors stabilized Jonathan, but gave me the prognosis in private. "Days, maybe a week. His heart is failing. We can make him comfortable, but there's nothing else we can do." Victoria arrived 3 hours later, Philip in tow. She'd clearly been crying, and for the first time, I saw genuine emotion in her face. He's stable, sleeping. They're keeping him comfortable." She nodded, sat down in the waiting room, buried her face in her hands. I should have visited more. I should have. I was always so busy with the foundation, with my work, and I kept thinking there would be time. I sat beside her. "He knew you loved him." "Did he?" "Because I'm not sure I showed it very well." She looked at me, and for the first time, there was no calculation in her eyes. Just grief. "Were you conning him? Please, I need to know. Was any of it real?" "At first, no. It started as a favor, a strange proposition at an airport, but it became real. Your grandfather gave me something I'd lost, a sense of family, purpose. He knew I wasn't really his biological son, but he chose me anyway. That's more than my real son ever did. My father died before I could tell him I loved him, before I could apologize for being too busy to visit. I didn't want to make that mistake again, but I did anyway." Tears streamed down her face. "And now you're the one who was there for him, and I hate that, but I'm also grateful for it." Jonathan died 3 days later, with me holding one hand and Victoria holding the other. His last words were, "My children, both of you, don't waste the time you have left." The will reading was surprisingly drama-free. Jonathan had split his estate 3 ways. 40% to me, 40% to Victoria, 20% to various charities. There was a letter for each of us. Mine read, "Tom, you gave me the gift of knowing that family is choice, not obligation. Use this money to build the life you deserve. Reconnect with your son if you can, but don't let anyone treat you as disposable ever again. You are worth more than you know. Thank you for being my son when I needed one. Love, Dad." Victoria's read, "My dear granddaughter, I know you loved me in your way, but love requires time, not just intent. I hope sharing my estate will teach you what I couldn't, that people matter more than projects, that presence matters more than presence, that family is something you build every day, not inherit. I love you, make me proud. Grandfather." 6 months later, Victoria and I had lunch in Denver. She'd resigned from most of her boards, started actually running the foundation instead of delegating it, and had begun volunteering at the programs we'd funded. "I've been thinking about what Grandfather said," she told me, "about chosen family. I was wondering if maybe you and I could try to be the family he wanted us to be. Not competing heirs, but siblings who actually care about each other." I smiled. "I'd like that." My phone buzzed. A text from Michael. "Dad, Emma's birthday is next week. She wants to see you. I know I screwed up. Can we talk?" I showed Victoria. "What do you think? Second chance?" Grandfather would say yes, but make him earn it. I texted back, "I'll be there. But we need to talk first. Really talk." As I left the restaurant, walking through downtown Denver in the spring sunshine, I thought about that night at the airport, about being abandoned by my son and saved by a stranger, about how the worst betrayals sometimes lead to the best second chances. I'd learned that family isn't about blood, it's about who shows up, who stays, who sees you as a human being rather than a means to an end. Jonathan had given me that. And even though he was gone, his final gift remained, the knowledge that I was worth more than how useful I could be to someone else. I pulled out my phone and called Michael. Time to find out if my son could learn the same lesson. The phone rang twice. Then, "Dad?" "Son," I said. "Let's talk."